Hey YouTubers, it's your girl Shannon from Tesla and Chill, and today we have a super exciting video just for you. Like you saw in the intro, we had that lightning bolt because we are going to be talking about something that is causing a lot of thunder in the car community. We are going to be talking about the Tesla and the Porsche Taycan. But before we do, take a second and subscribe to this channel right now. And if you have subscribed, a big thank you to you. Because of your subscription and because of your likes and comments, you have gotten us to our channel where it is today. So thank you for that. We appreciate you, but let's jump into our topic. Unless you've been living under a rock, you know that the Porsche Taycan is everywhere. News outlets are covering it. There's car blogs, car vlogs, magazines that are covering the release of the most highly anticipated car, the Porsche Taycan. And this car has been so hyped up and so highly anticipated. Porsche has been teasing this for years. We've seen concept cars, we've seen little snippets here and there. People have been giving their guesses on what they think it's going to look like, what they think it's capable of, and for us it is finally here. You probably saw Porsche did a huge international reveal and it caused a lot of hype. But we need to break it down and get to the real nitty-gritty details here. We need to compare it between the most highly rated car, the Tesla Model S. So, is that really Porsche's most direct competition? Well, yes and no at the same time. To really get to that answer, we need to talk about a few things. We need to talk about charging, we need to talk about the exterior, the interior, pricing, of course performance, and a few differences here that really you can't pin down on paper. But regardless, there has been a lot of animosity between Tesla lovers and Porsche lovers. They're all hating on each other's car, but there is some good news and we are going to come to that right at the end of this show. So let's break it down, and one of the first things we need to talk about is charging time. And we're going to specifically be talking about the Tesla Model S performance vehicle versus the Porsche Taycan Turbo and the Porsche Taycan Turbo S. And side note, interesting to know, Porsche did include the word turbo, even though there actually is no turbo. Since there's no exhaust on the car, it really can't have a turbo. But I think since the word turbo is so synonymous with that Porsche brand, I think that's kind of why they included it. But interesting to keep in mind. Now, let's get back to talking about charging. Now, this is really interesting because the Tesla Model S performance vehicle, it has a 100 kilowatt hour battery. Now, if we compare that to the Porsche Taycan Turbo and Porsche Taycan Turbo S, that has a slightly smaller battery at 93 kilowatts. But if we compare that to charging times, here's where the Porsche Taycan takes the lead. Now, if we're charging, the Tesla Model S Performance has a max charge rate of 200 kilowatts. Now, here's where the Taycan shines. The Taycan has a max charge rate of 270 kilowatts. And how long can it really sustain that kind of power? Who's to say? Maybe when it's released, we can give it a test ourselves. But right now, those are the numbers that we have, so we're just going to roll with it. How does that translate into range? The Tesla Model S on that kind of charge can go 345 miles. Now, the Porsche Taycan, on the other hand, that can go 279 miles, and that's according to the WLTP. That's the Worldwide Harmonized Light Vehicle Test Procedure. And if you really compare that to what the EPA says, the EPA is estimating that the Taycan can go about 250 miles. Now, there's a huge discrepancy there, and that huge difference is really because the EPA kind of grades cars with a stricter scale, where the WLTP, that has a more lenient way of grading cars. So that's why there's such a big difference there. But I think one of the big things to notice is that a lot of Porsche haters have kind of been noticing that the range is significantly less than what the Model S can offer. And I don't think that's as big of a deal as what other people are saying. And this is simply because a Tesla Model S owner probably has that Model S as their primary vehicle. And yes, they might be doing a lot of traveling in between states or across country because it is their primary vehicle. Now, a Taycan owner, on the other hand, Honestly, if they're owning a Taycan, they probably have more than one vehicle. So that Taycan is probably maybe a weekend car, a car they use maybe for a good Sunday drive, maybe they do some light racing in town. It's probably not a vehicle that they're going to travel across the country in or go on a road trip on. Of course, you're going to have those one-offs. You are going to have people that are going to do traveling in their Taycan. But I think for the most part, people who own one, they're going to be pretty centrally located and they're not going to do too much distance traveling. So I think with that kind of range that is a little bit lower at 279 miles or 250 as the EPA says, I don't think it's a huge deal because they're probably going to be charging at home or local areas where there are lots of charging places available to do so. Now let's stop here for just a second because I think I got a little too ahead of myself. We need to rewind our conversation and talk about probably one of the most important factors a customer is going to consider when purchasing a vehicle, and that's going to be price point. Now first let's talk about the Tesla Model S Performance. Now that is going to be the top of the line, highest standard you can get for a Tesla Model S, and that's going to come with a price tag of $105,000. Now if we compare that to the Porsche, the Turbo is going to have a base price of $151,000. So that's a pretty significant jump, but the jump gets even higher. If you're looking at the Porsche Turbo S, that is going to run about $185,000. And that is a huge difference. That's an $80,000 difference. For that kind of money, you could actually buy the Tesla Model S Performance and a Tesla Model 3 Performance and still have change left over to do rims, add extra lighting. You could really pimp out those cars and still save some money. So if you compare, you could actually own 2 Teslas or 1 Porsche Turbo S. So the decision is yours if you have that kind of money to spend. But let's talk about those because these are really premium cars. So if a person is spending that kind of money on cars, they probably are going to be able to do so thinking about these kinds of factors where they really are enjoying that kind of luxury. But this is where the customer branch is kind of split into 2 different categories. The Tesla customer is going to be really seeking something that's going to be really technologically advanced. And that's where Tesla really takes the cake here. Tesla at its core is a technology company. So that kind of customer is going to be a whole lot different than the Porsche customer. The Porsche customer, honestly, if they're going to be spending that kind of money, $180,000 on a car, that kind of is on par with the other turbo Porsche family vehicles. If you're looking at spending that kind of money on a Porsche Turbo S, really, that kind of price tag is okay with the Porsche family. A lot of turbos do run around that kind of price range. And if you're okay with spending that kind of money, you know that Porsche sets that high standard because they're looking at the driver experience. You're really paying in for the Porsche luxury. You're getting the driving experience that comes synonymous with their racing legacy. You know what the Porsche brand has built decade upon decade upon decade. And that's really the high standard that they've set. They're not looking to be the most technologically advanced when they're focused on driving and driving experience. When you have that kind of quality, that kind of money is okay to spend. Let's take that price and let's segue that right into performance because here's where the cars are really telling. Now, a Tesla Model S Performance can hit 0 to 60 in 2.4 seconds. Now, if we compare that to the Taycans, the Turbo can do 0 to 60 in 3 seconds, and the Turbo S can do it in only 2.6 seconds. And let's stop right there because that is super impressive, not just for an electric vehicle, but even compared to ICE vehicles. That is a really big deal. Now, if we look at those numbers right there, Tesla automatically takes the win. And that's where a lot of Tesla loyalists are kind of rubbing it in the Porsche loyalists' faces. They're kind of saying, you've already released a car, but it's already slower than the Tesla. But let's take a second and remember something else. Porsche has been known to sandbag their numbers quite a lot here. If you remember, when the 911 turbos were released, Porsche was sandbagging those numbers pretty big. They said that the 911 Turbo could get 0 to 60 in 3.2 seconds. But once it actually started being tested, it was hitting 0 to 60 in 2.7 seconds. And that's a big deal. That's a huge time shaving. Now, I wouldn't be surprised if Porsche did this with the Taycan. Once we start actually testing the car, once car and driver gets their hands on it, when we're really able to see what the Taycan is capable of, I would not be surprised if they shaved quite a few milliseconds off that time. Let's take a second and talk about the quarter-mile track time. This is really cool here. The Tesla Model S Performance has a track time of 10.6 seconds. That is so fast. It takes me longer than that just to find my keys in the morning. But if we compare that to the Porsche Taycan time, we don't have information for the Turbo, but Porsche did give us the time for the Turbo S, and that has a quarter-mile time of 10.8 seconds, which is still really fast, but on paper, the Tesla is really the winner here. Now, I wouldn't be surprised again if they were sandbagging that number because that's something Porsche has had a history of doing. So we'll have to see when it really is tested once it's in production, but that is the information we have now. Now we also have information about their top speed, and this one on paper, Tesla also kind of takes the cake because Tesla's top speed in the Model S Performance is 163 miles per hour, where the Porsche Turbo S has a top speed of 161 miles per hour. So again, Tesla wins here, but we'll kind of see what happens once production starts and once those tests actually happen. Now this is going to segue us right into another really important topic because it's news that is happening right now, and that's about the Nürburgring track. Now we have information that the Turbo S has a lap time of 7 minutes and 42 seconds, and that is blistering fast. Now we don't have that information, of course, for the Tesla Model S Performance because it's never been on that track before. But if you've been following Elon's tweets, we have a Tesla Model S that is going to be on its way there soon, and so I'm really excited to see how this test goes. I think it's going to have a really quick track time, but I wouldn't be surprised if the Turbo S really won here. And I say that because Porsche has really spent a lot of time utilizing their racing heritage, utilizing their engineering to really carve those corners and really get around the track and circuit in a really quick time. Porsche, again, it's a racing car, so they know about circuits, they know about all the curvatures. I think when it comes to straight line racing, that's where Tesla is really going to shine, but when it comes to the track, when it comes to circuits, that's where the Porsche is going to win. Let's talk about probably one of my favorite things about cars, and that is the looks, and we'll start with the exterior. Now, the Porsche Taycan, it's a beautiful car. You can tell that the Porsche team spent a lot of time researching how to really integrate the new electric vehicle into their traditional ICE vehicle family. It really is kind of reminiscent of a Panamera, but it has its own distinguished looks, even though it has the traditional and familiar curvatures, really streamlined look, and it really has that kind of racing heritage embodiment. Now, I think one of the factors that really kind of keys off the fact that it is an electric car is probably up near the front. If you look near the headlights, they have those little tiny arrow slits, and it kind of makes it look like the car is crying, but it's actually a really crucial part of the car because not only does it help make it aerodynamic, but it helps the air get to the brakes to help cool it down. So, pretty neat and not a huge detail, but something that is definitely noticeable. Now, if we move on to other parts of the car, I think the back of the car, at first, I thought it looked really cool. I think the taillights probably look really neat when they're on at night, but it is something that kind of reminded me of an old Lincoln, maybe a Lincoln Aviator or an old MKZ. It just kind of had that look that I don't think it looks as expensive as it could. But that's just my opinion. Other people might disagree. But I think one of the main factors about this Porsche is that even though it's electric, it still belongs in the Porsche family, and there's no question about that. It really blends in, and it's a really seamless integration into Porsche's future. Now, if we talk about the interior, I really like that Porsche took a big leap into the future, getting away from that traditional leather and using recycled materials. That's a really big deal because, of course, being eco-friendly is really on trend right now. But one of the other factors that I both like and dislike is their integration of all of their screens. Now, Porsche does have a few buttons and knobs on the steering wheel, of course like all their other vehicles, but they've really gotten into all the touch screens, which I think Tesla really pioneered the way here. Tesla really, I think, still kills it with their screen. If you look at the Tesla Model S, they have that beautiful 17-inch screen in their car, and they only have the one other screen right in front of the driver. So Tesla has those two screens. Porsche, on the other hand, has 4 screens, which is really cool. Again, I like that it's all touchscreen. I like that they've really become really modernized, but they've still kind of taken the car and married it with their racing heritage. So I think it's kind of a nod to maybe younger generations, but it still appeals to older generations that have really kind of gotten used to that Porsche look and feel. So I like how they married those two together. But I do not care for the fact that those touchscreens are really spread out from the car. So you have screens in front of the driver, in front of the passenger, you have screens that go down the middle onto the console area. And I think that's something that could maybe be kind of distracting. If you're a driver, you don't have one place to look for information. You kind of have to scan around the car at 4 different screens. And I think that could be a little bit distracting. But I do like the fact that they did stick with their 5-gauge read on the screen in front of you. That's something, of course, that's really traditional that Porsche does, and I like that they carried it into their newest vehicle. To wrap things up here, let's go back to our original question. Is the Tesla Model S really a direct competitor with the Porsche Taycan? Well, sort of, because they do have a lot of similarities, and we're actually going to get the Nürburgring track time pretty soon. They're going to be racing directly against each other's time. But ultimately, in my mind, the answer is no, they're not direct competitors. And that's simply because they're going after 2 different clienteles. Again, if you think about it, the Tesla at its core is a technology company. So their clientele is really going to be focused on having the latest cutting edge technology. They're going after people that, yes, like driving cars, yes, like good performance, but they're really going after people that really like autopilot. They want a car that's going to be fully autonomous one day, and we're getting pretty close to that. Now, the Porsche company, on the other hand, they've said that they're not really going to pursue that much in autopilot. And I think really they're going after kind of their really history of their customers. They're going after people that really love racing. They're going after the Porsche heritage customers, people that want that ultimate driving experience. And people that like that driving experience probably wouldn't use autopilot that much. They're not really interested in technology being their main factor of the car. They just want that full experience. They just like that racing feeling. And I think probably for a Porsche driver, if you're going to buy the Taycan, you've probably owned a Porsche before. It's probably not going to be your first purchase. Now, I think also something good to note here is that Tesla really appeals to their customers because they decided to change the industry. That was kind of one of the underlying things of their cars. Now, Porsche, on the other hand, they weren't setting out to change the industry. They more had to change because the industry was changing, and they had to keep up with the times. I don't think they would have made an electric vehicle if it wasn't such a big deal anymore. They probably would have just kept pursuing ICE vehicles, and they make really good ones at that. But I think going after 2 different clienteles really doesn't make the Porsche and the Taycan really direct competitors because they have such different people that they're trying to reach. Now, I do think ultimately even a little bit of competition between the companies is a good thing because at the end of the day, the customer is the one who wins. Each company is going to push each other to do better. Now, at the moment, we're still waiting to get the ring time for the Tesla Model S, so we'll have a follow-up video with that. But go ahead and drop us your comments. Do you agree with me? Do you disagree? What are your feelings about the Taycan? It's really a hot subject right now. Now, thanks for watching this one, and we will catch you next time.